Phishing attacks are almost a daily event, the result of someone trying to trick an unsuspecting victim into sharing their username and password for their bank account or other valuable resource. Other attacks try to impersonate the victim, attempting to change passwords in hopes of gaining access to their email, financial, or other online accounts. Simple username password combinations used to be enough to keep the bad guys out, not anymore. Two-factor authentication, or 2FA, is a security tool that has become the norm to protect high-value targets using SMS or voice calling to verify user identity. As financial services and many other industries work to secure their systems, they need access to two-factor authentication tools, including APIs, the ability to send SMS, and make voice calls to deliver temporary passcodes. During this event, we're joined by the experts from both Telestax and Network Intelligence who are going to show us how two-factor authentication can be offered as a service by service providers, creating new revenue opportunities. Be sure to stay with us for information on a live demonstration that you can try on your own. So let's get started. All right, so time for some introductions. Back to a regular program here. So I'm Alan Percy. I'm the CMO for Telco Bridges and today's event moderator. Our guests today are Kevin Nethercott. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at Telestax. And Kevin is joining us safely from his home office outside Salt Lake City, Utah. And Kevin, thanks for sharing your expertise today.
Thanks for having me here, Alan. It's good to be back.
Yep, glad to have you back. And also joining us as a return visitor is Jamie Hash. Jamie serves as the Chief Operating Officer for Network Intelligence and is joining us from his office in Auburn, California. And Jamie, we're looking forward to hearing about your implementation and your great demonstration today.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here again.
All right, let's take a look at our agenda for today. Well, we've covered the introductions. We're going to spend a couple of minutes and talk about why two-factor authentication, some of its use cases. We'll dive into how does it work, and then we'll spend some time talking about the commercial opportunity for offering 2FA as a service. And then Jamie's going to share some information about his implementation with a little bit of a case study story, and then also how he's got his network set up to offer the servers. And then lastly, we'll talk about a demonstration that you can access, and we'll wrap up with your questions. So lots to go over today, and let's get going. All right, so let's just start out what's the problem. And then, of course, the introduction to give you kind of a, an overview, but, in a nutshell, really the root cause of a lot of this is these phishing attacks are on the rise. And, there's a couple articles here that you can read. They have some statistics about it, but the attacks increase. Many times what they're looking for is credentials. They're looking for, bank account information. They're looking for your email information. They're looking for a way to, to crack in. And it seems, that as a result of this is that in a nutshell, we're going to have to turn to this two-factor authentication. And PC Magazine has a really good definition of what the two-factor authentication is. And it really boils down to, and I'll read it off here, from Neil's definition here. They're generally recognized factors for authentication is something as such as your password, something you have, such as a piece of hardware token or a cell phone, and something you are, such as your fingerprint or an iris scan or something like that. This two-factor means the system is using two of these options to verify your identity. And of course, one of the most common ones, and we've all used it many, many times, is to receive SMSs to our cell phone. So why do we do it that way? Well, handful of things. So as we mentioned, you can't just trust the user account and password anymore, right? The dark web is loaded with account information. Even though you don't think you've been phished, you probably have been. And once I did some digging on myself and was frightened to see that one of the common username and passwords that I have used for years and years and years was out there. And nothing motivates you fast enough to start changing your passwords until you found your stuff for sale out there. Number two is, your telephone number, right? When you make an inbound call into a contact center, for example, you'd think you'd be able to trust that caller ID information, but it turns out you can't. You can't trust it. The contact centers have been depending on that. For example, if you call into United Airlines, your telephone number you call from tells the agent who you are. Well, it turns out it's very, very easy to spoof a calling number. There's lots of tools out there to do that spoofing. So you can't trust that telephone number anymore on the inbound call. And obviously, smartphones are pretty ubiquitous and obviously very personal. There's obviously huge penetration in the market with smartphones. But it really, the ability of using a smartphone as a two-factor authentication really depends on the industry, what market you're working in, of course, what geography you're working in. And SMS is not universal. And I'll just tell you a personal little story. And it's with my mother-in-law having bought an Apple iPad. And she doesn't have a smartphone and doesn't use SMS at all. So, she gave them her home phone number for the two-factor authentication. So when she had to reset her password on her iPad, that had to call her home phone number and give her the 5-digit code she needed to crack back into her and change her password. So, again, it depends on the market. You can imagine if you're trying to market into senior citizens or you're trying to market into children, you can't depend on SMS as necessarily a method. So we're going to talk about SMS, but we also think it's important to support voice, and you'll see why when we get into it. All right, so for service providers, we see a couple of key opportunities for two-factor authentication. One of them is certainly protecting their own applications and their own network. But the second thing, and what we're going to talk about mostly today, is about how telephony service providers can offer two-factor authentication as a service to their businesses to help them protect their application and their network. And Kevin's got a great presentation that explains how this all works, what the business opportunity really is. So, Kevin, I'm going to turn it to you, and I'll advance the slides as you request.
All right. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate the opportunity here. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. What I wanted to do up front is share a little bit about TelesTax and our business model, because I think what's interesting about two-factor authentication is not only the use case and the technology behind it, but there's a real opportunity from a commercial standpoint to begin to offer this and take advantage of, really one of the higher margin products in our industry. Too many of the applications or use cases for telecom are going the other way. So it's nice to have a high margin product to talk about today. Just some brief background on TelesTax. We're based out of Austin, Texas. Though we are a global organization, we've worked virtually for the last 8 or 9 years since our inception of spinning out of Red Hat back in the day. And we've been offering hosted CPaaS services now for the last 3 years. And that's really the focus of us as a company. And when I talk about CPaaS, communications platform as a service, we're approaching the market in a very different way. So maybe next slide, Alan. What we do is we provide the technology stack that allows different players in our industry to provide APIs, programmable voice, programmable SMS, but also more importantly now are kind of these shrink-wrapped use case applications like two-factor authentication. And so we partner with CSPs, SIs, OEMs, and allow them to provide their own white labeled offering. So that could be a single use case like two-factor authentication, or it could be a full-blown, CPaaS white label offering through all the APIs to compete with, the retail players like a Twilio or a Nexmo or others that might be out there. And through that together, we can then go to the enterprise and provide these, rich applications and use cases that provide those higher margin opportunities, as well as the needed services the enterprises are now looking for as part of their digital transformation. Next slide. We're excited about this model because we see it as a great partnership and a way to work together that puts us in a very competitive position against what's out there in the market today. So by working together, we found that we can provide a much higher quality service because we don't provide any of the network side. We partner with service providers that already have all of their voice and SMS services. And so you handle the quality, we know it's good, and then we're able to bring that application layer on top of that, and it's a really good match. It allows us to control, the whole conversation really end to end. The other thing that's great is that most of our partners already have great termination and rates. And so by adding the functionality, we can be very competitive on a price point. And we'll talk about that with two-factor authentication, how we can be very competitive in the market and still have very good margins. But this is key to how we can work together with partners. And as we expand and look outside of the United States, there's even more of an opportunity as well. So our whole model is based on what we call CPaaS enablement, where we work behind the curtain, focus on the technology, and then really help you get to market with the right technology, sales solution, marketing capabilities as well. And by doing this, we can then focus on very specific use cases that your customers are looking for. And frankly, one of the most popular ones that we have out there today that the market is looking for is, in fact, two-factor authentication. So let's look how that can impact your business as well as your customers as we go through the next set of slides. Alan, next slide. So I wanted to put this slide right up front, maybe get your attention a little bit. This is an actual customer of ours where the service provider has a number of large enterprise customers. Specifically, this is a bank based in actually Jordan, of all places. And so what we learned through this opportunity, and it's repeated itself through other partners of ours, is that enterprises today already are using two-factor authentication. And it's becoming more and more popular as security and privacy laws continue to become more stringent and strict. This is only going to grow with more and more different verticals needing this capability. So I just wanted to walk you through kind of the financials on this and how this could work for you in a very similar situation. In Jordan, it's a country of just over 10 million people. And so it's not a huge market, but yet it can still generate this opportunity. So what we found with this bank is that they send out about 4 million text messages a month. These are alerts or reminders associated with the services that they provide. So about 3 million of those are basic alerts. You've got your money in your account, there's some type of transaction, something along those lines. And then there's about 1 million of those that are set for two-factor authentication, where they're authenticating users inside their banking process. And so if you do the math on this, these are kind of their retail prices that they're able to offer. And so they're able to sell an alert for about a penny. And then they sell two-factor authentication actually for a bit more than this, but as a conservative number, we're using a nickel for every authentication. And so if you look at that, this becomes $1 million customer for them just by this one single use case. We're seeing in the market today that on the high end, certain two-factor authentication providers are charging as much as 9 cents per authentication, and on the lower end, around a nickel. And so, in our business, anything that you can get over a penny for is pretty good business. And so two-factor authentication really fits the bill here on providing a really interesting high margin opportunity that can immediately impact your business. So as you listen to the rest of the webinar here, I would challenge you or invite you to think about your own potential use case. And for those of you that are service providers thinking about your installed base, who's using two-factor authentication today? This could be a very simple upsell opportunity for you and can really generate some high margin revenue for you. Next slide. So let's talk about two-factor authentication a little bit more specifically. Next. To do that though, I wanted to start and just get a sense of the audience here today and where you're interest or current capabilities might lie. So we've set up a simple poll here, and I'd invite you to choose one of the 5 answers here, or at least the one that's closest to what yours might be. So we'll take about 30 to 60 seconds and give you an opportunity to fill this out. The options as we look at it are adding security features or options for your current customers. Maybe it's something about improving a current application. If you think about a number of apps, smartphone apps or web apps as part of a business process, how does privacy and security fit into that? Maybe it's somewhere around you're using somebody else, but by using your own network, you can improve the quality and the level of the percentage of certifications that take place. Maybe you're just doing some comparison shopping around what's out there, or maybe you're already using someone else and you're trying to find an alternative. So if you can take a moment and pick that, then Alan will share the results here. As I was mentioning earlier, we're seeing a lot of new regulation around security, and so we see two-factor authentication moving into a lot of different verticals moving forward. I think all of us experience it maybe too often, as we get an update from Google or Facebook or WhatsApp or something where we've got to again validate ourselves with that one-time password. But there's a number of different use cases.
Good. Looks like we got just almost everybody here. So I'm going to wrap this up here and just right? Ready? You want to wrap it up? Okay, here we go. All right, and share the results. This is pretty interesting.
And that is interesting. Yep.
Yeah,
well,
that's number
great.
your first add security features or options for your customers with 57%. And then looks like improved turnkey application choices for the customers at 19, with providing better pricing for the other vendors at 14, and then the other 2 provide better network quality at 5%, and we already have two-factor authentication, just looking for better alternative at 5%. So that's interesting.
And that's consistent. I think what we're finding is that historically, two-factor authentication has been limited to maybe, I don't know, those that can actually do omni-channel with SMS, voice, and email. I think there's 4 or 5 of us that really can provide that as a full turnkey offering. And so, having an opportunity now to potentially take this capability and provide security features for your customers is a real opportunity. So I'm excited that you're all joining and here today. So let's go ahead and move to the next couple slides here.
Okay.
All right. So I think Alan did a good job of setting up what two-factor authentication is. I think the one point that I would share from this slide is that really what we're providing is a one-time password. So you hear OTP all the time as something that needs to be delivered. It's important though that you have multiple channels in how you can deliver that. It can be fairly straightforward to provide an SMS, but if they're offline or they don't get the text, we like to think that SMS is foolproof, but in reality, it's a non-guaranteed network. As Alan was sharing, certain individuals prefer a voice option, and email delivery could be a cheaper option to deliver. So it's important to have these 3. It's also important to allow them to work in unison. So you could send a text message, within a minute you don't get your answer, so you could send a voice. So it allows you some flexibility on how you interact with your customer on the other end. So I think that's a key point here, is as you look at two-factor authentication, it's much more robust, or it needs to be more robust than just a one-time password delivered via SMS. It needs to be a more complete solution. Next slide. What's exciting about it is, as straightforward as it is for us to deliver that through our platform, it's really impactful. So, just some data points. It's rare that you can actually say 100% on any data point, but two-factor authentication stops these automated bots 100% of the time, bulk phishing 99% of the time, targeted attacks 66% of the time. So as you go and look at how you can pitch this and share it with your customers, there's some real hard data behind this as a very meaningful security tool. Next slide. So why would you look to offer this or switch? You know, by working with TelusTax, we can instantly help you create your own branded 2FA solution for your customers. If you have the ability, if you have your own voice network or SMS network, we allow you to do that. So you carry your own traffic. If you don't have it, we can bring a partner and fulfill that for you. Branding it yourself it shows you're really innovative, that you're leading, that you have security solutions under your own brand. We find that that's a real critical differentiator when you're going into an enterprise account and you're competing on your day-to-day business. But now you can offer these really enhanced services, and it really sets you apart in that selling process. And at the end of the day, you can save your customer some money while making some money. Next slide. We don't need to get into the technical details of the how, but I just wanted to share that it's really simple. Essentially, we have an API created that on the customer's end, we need a to number and a from number. And then we help them pass through the platform, tokens back and forth to make sure that that gets applied properly for the billing process on your end so that you can invoice them. And it's not much more difficult than that. And so either our team or one of our partner teams can help you implement this in literally, a matter of minutes. It's really straightforward and simple to use. Next slide. So as we look at this, your customers are going to benefit by working with you because you're managing their network already. Because of that, together we can have higher delivery rates. That helps reduce the cost for the customer. You're able to give localized support. If you think about the competition, most of them are an online service that you sign up for. So this is something that you can actually give much better care and service to your customers. The API is simple to implement, and we also have analytics and different things that we can do through an intuitive console that allows you and your customer to track how two-factor authentication is being used and the success rate and so forth. So there's a lot of benefits that you can provide to your end customer that really help your business. Next slide. The other thing that's great about two-factor authentication is all the different use cases. So if you look at your customers or the vertical that you're in, there's a use case. So financial seems pretty obvious, right? Security is critical in everything that we do with whether that's banking or investment banking, wire transfers. There's just a lot of different areas in which it's really important to authenticate who the other user is. In the environment that we're in today, with everybody working remote and more online, that's culturally, I think, going to continue more. So two-factor authentication is going to be even more important as more and more people do remote banking and financial transactions. With HIPAA and other regulatory reasons, healthcare security is absolutely critical. We see a lot of use cases in travel and in retail and the financial side of confirming whether you've received a package, when you're actually buying your goods, you can have layer in that extra layer of security and so forth. So I think it's great that we're seeing such a broad implementation of two-factor authentication now. And so I'm sure everyone on the call has used it themselves and has opportunities ahead of them that fit one of these verticals and how you can implement these services. All right, next slide. The last thing that I wanted to share, and then we'll open up for questions after Jamie's portion, is that part of what we do at TelusTax is really help our partners. And so we've created a whole capability around sales and marketing enablement. And so anyone that might be interested in taking two-factor authentication to market, which we call Smart 2FA as a product, you have access to all of our tools. So we have videos, we have brochures, we've written this very detailed guidebook, the documentation. All of this is set up in a way to train your team, as well as we can share this and you can white label this and use it as your own collateral or materials to help you get to market even that much quicker. The other thing that we now have implemented as well is actually a CPAS sales training certification. So we have a full day, 8-hour training session that actually comes with a test at the end of it where you can be CPAS certified. And so we're spending a lot of time on our side to really help you be successful with these new features, new applications, new capabilities. And so we're not just a technology partner, but we really do help on the go-to-market side as well to make you successful. And within that environment, our Smart 2FA product is probably our hottest one right now. And so anything that we can do to help you grow your business, we're here for you and excited to partner where appropriate. So look forward to some questions at the end, but that gives you a good high level around the importance of two-factor authentication, the real money-making opportunity that's here, and then how TelusTax can help you take this to market. So appreciate your time, and I'll now turn the time over to Jamie, who is actually one of our CSP partners and has implemented a unique approach to two-factor authentication, including IVR and some other really cool things that he'll now walk you through. So Jamie, take it away.
Kevin, thank you very much. Before we get started on any architectural type slides, I'd kind of like to give a little information out on who Network Intelligence is. As Kevin mentioned, we're one of his existing service providers, and we're also a consultancy. So we not only have the ability to deliver these kind of services as a service, but we also have the ability to coach people when it comes to how do you implement something like this. We've been around for about, since 1985, and we have a long history of working with service providers in this space. I'm also pleased to say that we are the first certified managed service provider for ResCom One, which is the platform that TelusTax uses to deliver these services. Let's go to the next slide, Alan. We've defined CPAS under our own brand name called Sentient Class or Sentient Cloud Services. And we've basically defined our services falling into 3 different categories that have to do with business process and the management and control of those processes. The first is to provide integration of applications and communications, and we do that using an API, both inbound and outbound from our platform. We integrate with various types of media, in this case, voice and SMS, but also email and the ability to set up webhooks or web triggers, as we call them in our organization. And lastly, we have the ability to optimize and automate those procedures and processes using this platform. And all of that is done at the core with what we call Sentient Cloud Services or Sentient Control Point. Go on to the next slide, Alan. We have developed several applications that run off of our Sentient Cloud platform, ranging from different forms of IVR access, as well as IoT smart solutions using AI chatbots, telemedicine, and a sundry others, most of which I'd like to point out is circled over at the right-hand side in two-factor authentication, which we're going to be talking specifically about today. So this is one of many different applications that we can deliver as a service. And let's go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about the architecture that's behind it. We've developed an overall architecture that is a combination of switching, in this case, Pro SBC, and the applications layer and control, which we like to refer to as an applications border controller. We basically created that, and this is something that you could very easily do as a service provider because you would be marrying this with whatever switch fabric you're currently utilizing. For purposes of the demo today, we're going to be using a combination of voice and SMS as our two different factors for authentication. And if you look over on the left-hand side, you'll see that we have a mobile phone or we have a landline. Both of them are capable of interoperating with two-factor authentication applications. And we would bring those voice circuits or SMS messages into our switch fabric. And eventually we would terminate them into voice applications for an auto dialer, a business IVR. I'd send it to a voice contact center agent. We also, as was mentioned by Kevin earlier, have the ability to do API database requests. So we can pull information out of a database that has to do with two-factor authentication, or we could pull information out that if we wanted to ask a question or something like that, and then pass it on to the originating caller as a form of verification. And then, of course, we also have the ability to do third-party integrations. And in this particular case, because we're going to be accessing a 6-digit code that is provided by the cloud.rescom.com, we are actually using TelestaX as a third-party integration to do and accomplish our two-factor authentication. Let's go on to the next slide. Part of what we're going to be doing today is a demo, and the demo we're going to kind of hold off until after the presentation because we don't want anybody being distracted, because you're going to probably use the same device that you might have called in on in order to access the demo. What we've done is we've set this demo up so that we can receive information from a landline or a mobile phone, but in order to take full advantage of the SMS capabilities of the demonstration, we'd ask that you do it from a mobile phone. And what happens basically is, if you look at the lines down below the diagram, the inbound call comes into either a toll-free or a direct number in this case, in which case that would go to our platform, and the platform would text back an SMS message to the inbound caller's mobile device. And it would set it up as in this case, a demonstration, and it would ask them to reply with the 6-digit code that's being delivered to them via SMS. The calling party would then authenticate the code by returning it via SMS. Our system would validate it by doing a database dip to confirm that the 6-digit code that was provided was the one that they returned. And then as a confirmation, it would not only send an SMS message back to that individual stating that the SMS message code that they entered was correct or incorrect, as the case might be, but it would also make a voice phone call to that individual, and that would either go to a phone number that was part of the database that the service provider was accessing using the platform, or it would, in this case, for the demo purposes, it would return a voice phone call to the originating caller's phone. And it would then present them with an IVR. That IVR can be used for a couple of different things. One is to verify that the person who is picking up the phone is actually the one that they that originally authorized the access to the information. Another one might be to provide them with an IVR because they were already qualified, and it would then route them to the appropriate call center agent so that they could proceed with whatever the purpose was before the validation and confirmation took place. And I would highly recommend that we try the demo out, and we'll provide that phone number at the end of the presentation so everybody can try it. Let's go on to the next slide. There are several different benefits that are going to be associated with our product. The IVR exchange is simply used for mobile landline detection, in this two-factor authentication application, but it does do several different things. And one is that it provides for a very rapid implementation time. We can have a system like this up and running in a matter of days, as opposed to the time it would take to ask a development organization to implement this kind of a solution. We protect the installed base of the service provider because we use their carrier, and we can enhance legacy systems that are already out there. So if there are contact centers that are currently out there using existing toll-frees, we can set this system up using those existing toll-frees or inbound phone numbers and incorporate this capability on the front end of any kind of a voice contact center. We utilize the visual designer capabilities that Rescom provides us, and it allows for a very short time to market and offloads applications and platform development, as I mentioned earlier. We basically provide a very graceful integration of legacy applications because we do integrate with those toll-frees, we do automate the two-factor authentication process, and we do it for voice as well as for web portals who might be requesting a password reset, or possibly even SMS as a solution that would then make a phone call back or send an email back. And there's no disruption to that legacy application in order to be able to implement this type of solution. And no capital investment, I might add. And lastly is kind of the productivity and operational costs enhancements. Because we are offloading two-factor authentication and the responsibility to do that from the agent, the first portion of the call is no longer necessarily set up to qualify whoever is calling in. That's already done before the contact center agent, in this case, would be connected with the inbound caller. And one of the other byproducts of this is that if we use a toll-free to validate two-factor authentication and go through the validation process using SMS, at the end of that procedure, the system will automatically call the originating party back or call the phone number that's in the database to set up a conversation between the contact center agent and the originating caller. And the reason that's important is because the toll-free usage drops to about 10% of what it normally would on a long duration call. And that's because the system's going to be calling them back using lower cost termination services for the contact center discussion. It really kind of benefits both the agent community because of the productivity increase and the cost of the underlying services that are needed to support the application. And if anybody's interested, they can always log on to our website to find out more about IVR exchange with mobile landline detection.
Awesome, Jamie. I will say one thing. The fact that I wouldn't have to sit waiting on hold instead of having an agent call me back when they're ready would be a huge win. So that's awesome. I'm impressed that you guys were able to put that together. Okay, real quick, wanted to just share, where does TelcoBridges fit in all this? You heard obviously from a couple of great partners with Telestax and with Network Intelligence, all of which we've been working with them for a couple of years now on some of these projects. But I just wanted to give a quick overview diagram that shows how ProSBC fits into this, and specifically into Jamie's network. He's able to bring in various trunks in from 800s and national trunks and BYO trunks in and land them on ProSBC. And in his particular case, he's got it hosted on AWS. ProSBC then normalizes all those calls. And one of the more important things for him is doing intelligent traffic management. I mean, basically managing the traffic that comes out of the SBC and delivers it into his platform so he can deal with traffic surges and those kinds of things as it lands in his CPaaS platform, which he showed so elegantly in his previous diagrams in his own cloud environment. based on Telestax. And then that platform, of course, can make either make calls or send SMS messages out to the mobile users. So there's a handful of real benefits for him, and that's not only the traffic management and the SIP trunking interoperability. So if a customer comes to him and says, "I want to use my DIDs," he can land those DIDs on ProSBC, normalize that traffic before it goes into his platform, but also protects it against denial of service attacks, DDoS attacks, registration floods, these kinds of nasty things that happen. And one other little piece is the encryption offload. So if a service provider wants to use encrypted trunks, ProSBC can decrypt them before they go into the TelesTax environment, which offloads all that work from the CPaaS platform, eliminating all the decryption computation effort that needs to happen. So it's really been a glove and hand kind of great relationship with our CPaaS partners to kind of deliver this architecture. And as you saw with Jamie's implementations, he's been able to build all kinds of really neat applications with it. And we hope many of our other service provider customers pick up on this. So just a quick note, I just wanted to clarify, for some of the new folks that are on, we offer a couple different session border controllers. We offer free SBC and also Pro SBC. Our free SBC platform is targeted towards the open source and educational markets. Very easy to use. It's a great way to just get started if you want to dabble with it. It's a great little platform. It's free to download, free to use, with some limitations in it. Pro SBC is obviously our industrial hardened version of the software, targeted towards both service provider and enterprise applications. A wide range of use cases from access to peering to software as a service. Obviously supports encryption and HA. With optional 24/7 support, and it's very cost effective at $1 per session per year. So it's really fit into this kind of marketplace with a software as a service, growing, pay as you grow kind of model. It fits in really, really well, and it's seen wide adoption in the space. And one of the great things is that we've got this great interoperability portfolio, including Telestax and a lot of other soft switch vendors, open source platforms, IPPBXs. There's billing platforms in here. And this is all part of our alliance, our Pro SBC and TelcoBridges Alliance program, where we work with these and many other software vendors who build all kinds of really neat applications based on the software from TelcoBridges and our media gateway platforms too. So if you want to learn more about them, you can find out at our freesbc.com/alliance page, and that's where there's some complete library of all these various partners. And if you're one of our partners and you're on this call and we haven't got you documented, you need to reach out to us too. There's a way to get your listing posted up on there. So with that, that brings us to the end of the presentation content, and now we're going to move over. And first, I'm going to start with sharing the phone number. I want everybody to get your pencil and pens out and get ready. Here's the phone number for the demo. It's here in the US, it's area code 310-589-4015. And I'll repeat that real quick. It's area code 310-589-4015. And you can call that afterwards, would be great, so that you're not distracted in the middle of the call here. So appreciate you doing that. Okay, so we're open for questions now. If you've got a question, you want to open the Q&A panel on your screen and go ahead and pop one in there. We'd be happy to answer your question here. So I'm just going to lead off with a couple of questions that I had. So Jamie, I noticed as you're kind of working your way through your discussion of all these applications you've built, is there particular verticals or markets that you found really have shown a lot of interest in this kind of in this kind of the mixed portfolio of solutions that you've put forward? Jamie, I lose you there?
Yep, sorry, I had myself muted. Yeah, the answer obviously is yes. One of the things that we find is that we're really more of a service enablement shop, if you want to call it that. And so what we try to do is we try to work primarily with verticals that are delivering services to end users.
Okay.
And the reason we do that is simply so we can leverage our capabilities to more applications. We do provide these services also through the channel. And if there are master agents or resellers that are interested, in these type of services, they can deliver those as a service.
Good.
So there are several different ways that we do provide these services, and several different channels that we go through.
Okay. All right. And then Kevin, I would ask you a question too. So maybe kind of go over the kind of service provider that would find this two-factor authentication most valuable. What's it look like? Is it is it a regional service provider? Is it an ILEC? Is it a competitive carrier? What's kind of the sweet spot?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the thing that's interesting with two-factor authentication is, as we've been discussing, it touches so many different verticals. And so frankly, anybody that has a customer that has security needs is a candidate, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at the market, the highest volume of two-factor authentication comes from, the big web companies. So Facebook, Google, Uber, Airbnb, these types of companies are using two-factor authentication, millions and millions per month.
Sure.
So if you can steal one of those, you're golden. But then, I think banking and the financial is a high usage. So even if that's your community bank, they've got needs for that. And then it kind of breaks down from there. So we're finding a broader need for those capabilities. And so it really touches any type of service provider, whether that's an ILEC, competitive, whether that's even an SI that's got a solution that they're bringing into their enterprise, that could work as well. So that's what's exciting about this, is that it touches so many areas that it's really open to almost anyone to go in and resell as their own.
Good. Okay. Matter of fact, asking the question about reselling, Gary popped a question in here asking, what's the business model for a reseller, for a TelcoBridges reseller? That Gary's one of the business he resells our media gateways and Pro SBC, which in itself we have our own reseller program for those two elements. But what's the reseller margin? Walk us through the reseller program that TelusTax has for two-factor authentication.
Sure. So essentially, it's a service, right? And so the way that the business model works is that we charge per authentication. And so whether that's an SMS sent out or a voice message, a text to speech with the one-time password, we charge on successful certifications. And so the way that we engage is that it's, again, a bring your own carrier white label model. And so if you're a service provider today, we would do a SIP interconnect. If you have your own SMS capabilities, we would then connect via SMPP. You'd be connected then to our core platform, as Jamie had shared in his architecture. And then we provide all of the white label capability behind that for the documentation, for the user experience, and even the API is white labeled as well. And so that becomes the base of the relationship. And then the model it's a cost plus model. So we charge per message, per minute of usage, or in this case, per authentication for two-factor authentication. And we allow our customers or partners to then set their own retail price that works for them on the other end. And the more you use, the better the discount we can give you. But it's all usage based, therefore there's not a big cost up front to engage with us, and we're able to onboard you in a day or two to get you completely CPaaS enabled. It's really straightforward. So it's really easy, I guess.
Okay.
is the short answer on
Sure,
how
sure.
to be a reseller and partner of ours.
Yeah. So so there's the kind of reseller though, right? That goes out to service providers and offers these services. In your case, right? In our case, it's software and hardware.
Right.
So if you're a reseller and you have a relationship with, let's say, a regional set of service providers, and they wanted to offer this, would they engage directly, Kevin, with you and your team then to set up either a resale agreement or a agent kind of environment?
Yeah, so we never sell directly to the enterprise. We always sell through our partners. And
Mm-hmm.
so if there was, an agent or a dealer reseller that wanted to take this on as a product because of, who they're already selling to,
Mm-hmm.
then we could absolutely introduce you to one of our partners, Network Intelligence being a great candidate here, to then be able to resell that at the enterprise level. So we wouldn't directly work with an enterprise reseller. We work at the telco level,
Right.
but we have many partners that would, I'm sure, love to have, additional resale capabilities out there.
Got it. Good. Okay. Well, it looks like that's it for our question today. So we must have been super clear. So and we're just wrapping up here for time. So just a couple closing comments. First, I'd like to thank both Kevin and Jamie for sharing your expertise, and for our audience for spending time with us today. As noted in the opening housekeeping, we'll be receiving an email in the next day or so with links to the slides, including a recording of today's event. Please do share this content with others in your network that would find it helpful. And with that, I'm going to wish everyone a good day and continue your social distancing, and hope you're safe and have a great day.